If this is what's true, tell me how come I keep forgetting we're not in love anymore, baby. Things will never be the same again. I keep forgetting how you made it so clear. Yeah, baby. Don't say that, don't say that, don't say that. I know you're not mine anymore, anyway, anytime. Tell me how come we're not in love anymore. How come things will never be the same again. I keep forgetting how you made that so clear. I keep forgetting, baby. Every time you're near, we're not in love anymore. Every time you're near, things will never be the same again. Forget how you made that so clear. Every time you're near,
Hi, Jonathan. Listen, I've watched a number of your podcast videos, and some of them actually had to listen to them a few times. Very interesting stuff, especially lately. However, I would like to comment on a specific aspect of the getting off social media. Totally agree. That is a strategy that everyone should be doing right now. And anonymity is also a part of that strategy. And in regards to that, you seem to be dissing Signal. And Signal has its functions. Yes, somebody can infiltrate Signal, but the point of Signal is to know who is in that group and vet who is in that group and stop any man-in-the-middle attacks from getting in that group. And that Signal is encrypted and it is protected because it's only the information is only stored on your phone. So as an example, if you and I were to have a conversation and I knew it was you and I verified it was you and you knew it was me and you verified it was me, which you can do on Signal, and nobody can break that connection, and if they do, we would know it. I could leave a message for you. I could have a conversation with you. I could pass you files, et cetera, and none of that information is public. This is public. Phone calls are public. It's an app, right? It's an app like every other app. Texting is an app. Signal is an app, but the information is only stored on your phone. When your phone deletes that, all that is gone. There is no server that stores it. So I wanted to make that comment. It has its functions. Can it be abused? Can it be, quote unquote broken into? Yeah, if the users don't know what they're doing, if the users don't care who is part of that platform and they allow anybody to enter without verification, yes, that's true. Lastly, I'd like to say that I think that you're very much on target with, much of what you're saying, especially the social media aspects. It's a reality curating military process here, and people do need to be aware of that, and that is a whole nother issue, and getting people to break down their idea of, or reform their idea of how their information is being used, how that data is being used, how that data is being captured, how that data is being, correlated and will eventually be used against them for all kinds of reasons is extremely important. So thank you for bringing up these points. Super, super awesome. You're just an absolute.
Unfortunately, my voicemail is limited to 3 minutes at that number there, 1-412-423-6343. It's a Google voicemail, but I do listen to it. It's just that people don't really call it. I was really happy to get that email. Today's show is directed at the Netherlands, so I thought I'd put a hat on that signifies this. I got this from my schoonmoeder. This is an interesting voicemail because what it does is it shows you that, yes, of course, the pretense is that you know who you're talking to, that you trust who you're talking to. But the point is always comes back to, it's not about the app anymore. It's not about, in fact, some parts of that app where the messages can be set to disappear in a few hours, for example, could be even better for somebody that's manipulating you, because at the same time that you think you're on a hyper secure, stored only local and encrypted app, you are also essentially giving that person access to your consciousness with the cover of such an app. And the point always comes back to, if a group of people decide to lie to you over a long period of time, you don't stand a chance. And it doesn't matter whether it's a Telegram group or a Signal group or an email chain or a Zoom meeting that you attend every weekend. You are going to be fooled if there are 5 or 6 or 8 people all on a script, all improvising on that script in order to fool everyone there into accepting their working assumptions. That's the trick. That's what 5th generation warfare is. And at the same time, all of these people are scripted to specifically say that it's the algorithms and it's the censorship and it's the, something that's out of our control, instead of a coordinated, scripted, but improvised drama, a theater that creates problems and then solves them over a time frame that serves them to run out clock after clock after clock on different things. And I think the pandemic just finally made it visible. If you can step back far enough and look at a long enough time horizon, you can see how America was sabotaged pretty much on purpose, using public health, the CDC, opioids, pain, all of this stuff it's just one contiguous national security operation. And if you don't want to accept that, then I guess, like I said, this is not a message for everyone, because in order to understand how America is being sabotaged, you have to see it as a national security priority, something that was put in motion decades ago under the pretense that our rivals might beat us to a punch, that still hasn't fallen and may never fall because of the irreducible complex biology that we are a small part of which we are a small part. I don't know how to say that exactly, but anyway, thanks for being here. I just want to make a very quick point, and maybe I'll make myself smaller here. over here to the handy and dandy bookshelf and grab a book. Where the hell did it go? Okay, now I'm a little bit weirding out here. Oh yeah, there it is, sorry. Grabbing this bookshelf. This is Tony Lyons in all of these pictures with various people that we could discuss, including like Whoopi Goldberg and Alan Dershowitz. He sells books for lots of people. The question starts to become, as you step back again, and for example, let's just quickly move over here. And if you look at this bookshelf, this entire bookshelf here is composed of books that were written by essentially what I guess you would call a health freedom movement over the course of about 2 decades. And it is an extraordinary level of detail, and it is an extraordinary lack of progress. It's almost as if these people took a story and over, like, let's say 20 years, decided to, almost like they do in academia. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to inflate this here. Almost like they do in academia, they took a story and they sliced it up into a million pieces so that they could, you don't want to write one grant that solves the entire problem and answers the entire question, when you could write a grant for each individual sub-question and make it seem like that sub-question is where you're at right now, with this big, long plan in mind, which is what they teach you to do in academia with regard to your research question. It should have very narrow scope, but very broad, depth in terms of how long can you sustain this question of, how is space encoded in the entorhinal cortex, or how is attention, seated in the prefrontal cortex, or how does the amygdala contribute to addiction? These questions can be divided into a million sub questions, and that's really the art of academia. And it's interesting to think that maybe this bookshelf right here is just an example of taking I don't know if I'm in focus. I'll just try to do this without crashing my camera. This camera likes to crash. There we go. This bookshelf is essentially evidence of the same thing, whereas somewhere in the 70s or 50s or 40s, they figured out that maybe we're making a mistake here. When it goes intramuscularly, there's all kinds of other things happening. Maybe we should be more careful about it. And for a while, books over here on the shelf seemed to indicate that they were very specifically calling it hypodermic injection because it was hypodermic. It was just under the skin. And that injection site is, from an immunological perspective, biologically as different as, I don't know, American baseball and cricket. Nah, it's probably not a very good one. It's probably more like American baseball and, I don't know, mixed martial arts. I mean, we're talking about American baseball and classical music being played on a accordion, and the difference between those two skill sets. This is some serious stuff we're talking about here. And that was the wrong button, so I might have already screwed this up. No, I didn't. And so Tony Lyons is an interesting guy because, again, as I said, he sells books. This book came out in 2008. I'm not some kind of super smart guy. I've got a little trick. I put the little number on top of the spine here so that I can keep them in order. And then as I pull them off and read parts of them or put things away, I'm always reminded. And so eventually I remember it. I had to have a strategy like this also when I was an academic, because I don't just remember names. I remember ideas. But this is interesting because a lot of these pictures are with people that you could identify quite easily as being on the other side of the Maha coin right now. In particular, I think Whoopi Goldberg is an interesting one. Here you see him with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. already long ago with the World Mercury Project before it became Children's Health Defense in 2018. Here you see with another Kennedy. If I make my head smaller, here you see him with a Megyn Kelly with short hair. Here you see him with Kennedy and his new wife. That's that movie director up there. That lady with the funny hairdo is actually the wife of Jesse Jackson, who Mark Kulak, seems to have identified Jesse Jackson as an interesting historical figure connected to, I don't know, people like Ira Magaziner. I don't know who that guy is, but maybe you can look that up too. Mark gets involved with a lot of connections between people who teach people and people who fund people, and no one else seems to care, but Mark, seems to connect an awful lot of dots with a lot of publicly available data. If you don't know who I'm talking about, that's Mark Kulak at Housatonic ITS. Housatonic Live 2 is what you have to look for on YouTube, but he also has his own PeerTube like I do, which is stream.housatonic.live. Put that into your app and you can have his stuff right on your phone as well. So again, back to the story. You might think that I want you to pay attention to that picture down there on the bottom, which is an extraordinary picture. This is a Skyhorse book. Skyhorse Publishing being the publishing house that also puts out all of the CHD books. Here's Robert Malone's book, and you can see on the back it's got Skyhorse and Children's Health Defense. So they're kind of like the publisher of the publishers of that guy. That maybe they have a few other heads that or names that they publish under. I don't really know. You might think I want you to pay attention to this, but it's really whatever. That's just funny. The 2008 book is most important because this 2008 book has an epilogue, and in the epilogue you can see here that in the epilogue there's this thing. It is a fiction. So the whole book, this book is supposed to be a book about his time as the governor of Minnesota. And if you don't know that history of America, please look it up. But he was allowed to write this book, or encouraged, or recruited or paid to write this book by Skyhorse Publishing, and they put out this book where it's now stands in a dead heat with the candidacies of Clinton, Obama, and McCain, Huckabee, and who? Jesse Ventura and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It's an interesting story that actually ends with leading protesters to the White House gates. Ventura is shot by a lone gunman, and then that makes Robert F. Kennedy Jr. the president of the United States, which is not really what happened. They don't say this, right? Clinging to life, but that's what would happen if he died, right? That's what would happen if he died. That's how the book ends. And then, I don't know why, but they quote the Hotel California at the end. I mean, is this a joke? No, it's really 2008 is when the book came out. This book ends with a 2008 in November story about him being shot and clinging to life with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the wings to be president. It's just an interesting, it's an interesting observation if you think about that from the perspective that he became the campaign manager for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. along with the then vice president of CHD, Mary Holland. And then when I was hired by CHD, Mary Holland left the campaign and came back as the head of CHD. And that's just history. That just happened in 2023. And so it's very interesting to think that this man isn't a small player in Maha, but is actually one of the foremost influencers in terms of followers and inside information. And of course, he's providing all these books for all these people, which could be multi-generational wealth. Anyway, then let's go on to 2011 on AMC. Consider the possibility that they're telling you the truth right here, showing you the truth right here in 2011.
But you can tell if someone's lying. You know, you can sort of feel it in people. And I have lied. I'm sure I'll lie again. I don't want to lie. You know, I don't think I'm a liar. I try not to be a liar. I don't want to be a liar. I think it's like really important not to be a liar.
That was not a great day. Not a good day. That was not a great day.
He is the life of parties he has never attended. If opportunity knocks and he's not home, opportunity waits. When in Rome, they do as he does. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always ruin things, but when I do, I prefer the Great Reset. Stay awake, my friends.
These people are absolutely out there. Yeah. And anybody that's in our space, you kind of have to assume that you are interacting with them at one point or another, usually surreptitiously. So these are the chaos agents, and they're the ones that they so want to work with you and collaborate with you, and you know, you're like,
tell you how brilliant you are.
Yeah, precisely. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, it's not just the honey trap with the short skirt. There's all kinds of ways to gain the confidence of somebody, and flattery is one of them.
We will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged. A condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged. He was neurologically damaged. A condition that we will not call autism. I don't like the word autism. He was vaccine damaged.
Get their domain registration from outside the country, and I don't think you could say that any operation like that would be competitive. You know, again, the media operation is not an end in itself. You know, I'm not trying to say like, oh, we need to be here because we have a right to be here or something. You know, I didn't choose media for any other reason other than it's an instrumental component in political power, and I guess that's the fundamental question, is this debate about whether we are about sort of fighting for this like libertarian society or something, like we have to fight to make people skeptical of government, or this idea that, you know, political power exists and that's a reality of life, and force exists, and all these things are there, and if we want a society to be made in our image, we have to play, you know, we have to play by the rules that are here. We have to be pragmatic and live in the real world. And if we want to have outcomes that we like in the society, we're going to have to fight for political power. We're going to have to wield political power. And there's really no way around that, you know? And so I think, you know, we can kind of go back and forth about well, maybe this will make people like the government, or about this regulation stuff. But I mean, I think the more fundamental question is, do we think that libertarianism is even possible? Is it, in my opinion, this constant talk about, well, we have to get people away from the government, and we have to bring about, sort of this voluntarist society. I don't know. I don't see how that has any efficacy in the year we are in. I see we have half the country that is hell-bent on gaining political power to destroy the other half, and we reluctantly have to take up, this defensive position to fight for the same political power to try and stop them. And I think we're realizing that there's no such thing as a society that's neutral. There's no such thing as this, state that everybody's sort of static and kept in this neutral position, and nobody's harming anyone else, and everyone's just kind of free to expand and move around. I think that, political power is a fact of human civilization. I don't think we've ever had a society where that was not a fact.
So, just in case you're not very imaginative, I'll give you some ideas of what sort of things you're supposed to say when you're shooting, okay? Alright. I'm doing this for you, Hitler. I'm doing this for you, Trump. This is the most offensive one of them all, okay? Use this one with caution. Let's go, Brandon! Subscribe to PewDiePie!
It's literally turning into worst case scenario. It's literally turning into worst case scenario.
I'm afraid that the latest data tells us that we're dealing with essentially a worst case scenario. I'm afraid that the latest data tells us that we're dealing with essentially a worst case scenario.
I'm not sure exactly who he is. His name is JJCouey, and I believe he's a consultant for CHD. And I believe he has a PhD in some sort of scientific discipline, from what I understand.
Actually have degrees in applied mathematics, immunology, computational biology, biochemistry, and molecular biology. Actually have degrees in applied mathematics, immunology, computational biology, biochemistry, and molecular biology. Actually have degrees in applied mathematics, immunology, computational biology, biochemistry, and molecular biology. Actually have degrees in applied mathematics, immunology, computational biology, actually have degrees in applied
over the
mathematics,
last 3 years,
immunology,
you have been
computational
subjected
biology,
to the most
biochemistry,
massive,
and molecular
harmonized,
biology. Actually
globally
have degrees
coordinated
in applied mathematics,
propaganda
immunology,
campaign in the history
computational
of the Western
biology,
world. Full
biochemistry,
stop.
and molecular biology.
Over
Actually
the
have
last 3
degrees in
years,
applied
you have been
Your latest video with Paul was amazing, JJ.
Wow,
Really,
that's a very nice compliment. Thank you very much. Can you hear me better now or not?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay, good.
It was really like it nailed down two things for me, but I finally really understand the infectious clone idea, and I think it's very, very likely what happened.
The masks, or behind, proper testing, or behind the 6-foot distancing, the 2-meter distancing, or behind these shots, right? This technology that had never been used widely. None of that is over. And as Sasha Latifa pointed out this morning, these were military operations, but they were global military operations, right?
He introduced Jonathan, who's going to talk about his latest kind of distillation of what the pandemic means to society, to biology, to science, and to democracy, and to the whole kind of idea of empiricism and integrity. And then each of us, this incredible preeminent panel that we have, each one of you is going to get a chance to comment on his thesis. I wanted to bring everybody together because I've read Jonathan's thoughts about this. He's one of the most thoughtful critics of the pandemic management from the beginning. He was one of the co-founders of Drastic, which was the organization of independent scientists all over the world, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, did really wonderful work in understanding the science, in unearthing scientific studies that made a lot of this stuff comprehensible. And he's also been instrumental in uncovering some of the involvement of the intelligence agencies and others in the management of the pandemic, and also the long history of what we call gain-of-function science.
It's my birthday, so I'm playing one more song, dang it.
When you get the rhythm and words, I'll make you cold. When they break it down, then this world is all you know. Hands up, you're working it, and then get yourself together. When you call the dominoes fall, it's time to go. Now I'm feeling so far away. You see the colors and all the kids going home. The night is crawling up to the day. I hear the birds ringing, the sirens all singing. Just wanna stay up all night with you. Just wanna stay up all night with you. There's nothing that I wouldn't rather do. Just wanna stay up all night with you. I'll keep moving. Don't wait for nothing now. Keep moving. Don't wait for nothing now. I'll keep moving. Don't wait for nothing now. Keep moving. Don't wait for nothing now. Nothing now. 1, 2, what you doing? I've been jumping through some hoops. Wanna get my body loose. Wanna tell you what to do. I've been running out of bounds like an animal struggling, looking for a diamond. I'm trying, I'm fighting, riding in the rhythm now. I just wanna stay out all night. Wanna stay out all night with you. Just wanna stay up all night with you. Stay up all night. Just wanna stay up all night with you. There's nothing that I wouldn't rather do. Stay up all night. Just wanna stay up all night with you. With you. Turn up
Well, shoot, I thought I had enough time there, and I don't, which is really, I guess that means that I gotta go with this then. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. This is Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist. All of these podcasters out there in the internet universe avoid saying murder for the last 6 years, and the way that they do it is they ask questions about a lab leak cover-up. They ask questions about the suppression of drugs or treatments. They ask about autism spectrum disorders, many causes, including genetic ones, and they write books about it. They ask if some vaccines do harm or not. They just want safe ones. They argue about islands and plane rides and girls and photographs, and that some shootings are fake or that there are more than one shooter. And some people argue that people are blackmailed and stuff. And I just don't think any of this stuff makes sense. This is an aircraft carrier, and you can't run an aircraft carrier by blackmailings or with plane rides or that kind of stuff. This is a highly organized military operation that spans administrations. We've been tricked twice into believing that America is such a silly country that after 250 years we voted for Trump twice, and the rest of the world is pretty convinced as well. And the way that they do it is with social media. America is not as screwed as they want you to think. This is the way out, ladies and gentlemen. This message is not for everyone, but it is for anyone who wants to know the truth. The Earth was tricked into believing the USA chose Trump twice, just like the Earth is. So a lot of people are tricked into believing that America is the slavery inventor capital of the universe, and it's just all the memory of a goldfish. Holy man, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. The Earth is being governed by a theater. It is our acquiescence to social media around the first world that has allowed us to be governed by scripted actors, and I think they're going to do their best to lay a network in every first world country so that essentially the populations of the EU, the populations of America, Canada, can be manipulated against themselves so that they will acquiesce eventually to a global system that supersedes national borders, national systems, national budgets. That's kind of the idea. And while they get you arguing about all of these crazy mythologies like autism spectrum disorder, gender spectrum disorder, it is gender spectrum disorder. That's what I should put there, but that wouldn't be a myth. I'm really happy that you're here. Podcasters are not real people is actually the biggest message that I have stumbled upon in my, maybe my 6 years of this work. As a biologist, I kind of stumbled into this as a naive wannabe neuroscientist, and over the last 6 years, I've learned enough molecular biology to make most people sick, and come to realize that with a unbelievably large cast of need-to-know basis scripted actors, you can govern the world. And effectively, before social media, this would have been much harder to pull off. But with social media, not only can they do that, but they can create the illusion that people like you and me are interacting with those people, and that occasionally those people break the fourth wall and shake our hand or retweet or repost our thing, or maybe they'll even mention my name on their podcast. And that's exactly how this trick is played. And I'm afraid that it's a pyramid of scripted actors in the sense of, at every layer there are some more people that essentially you have to accept. And at the top, Jeff Bezos and Lucky Palmer and Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are people that you have to accept as free-thinking agents in our world that, because they are so smart, they were able to usurp the 400-year-old grip that the banking industry had on all of the governments in the world, since the Rothschilds. They were able to usurp that system by inventing PayPal. And since then, Elon Musk has got 7 companies and builds rockets and stuff. And this guy is, also, I guess, a really rich guy because of Thiel Capital and the wise the wise advice that he gets from Eric Weinstein. I mean, these are all just ridiculous. It's absolutely as ridiculous as thinking that Alex Jones is a free-thinking man who's just doing his best to save America too, because that is the way that we break through. And so what I'm suggesting to you, if you're outside of America, is that it might be hard for you to conceive how over the last 20 to 30 years, but certainly in the last 20 years, the internet, which had all this promise for freedom and for, exchange of knowledge and information, freedom across borders, was of course usurped and sabotaged. And the way that you're led to believe that that would happen is through censorship and through gaming of the algorithm, and that's what they want you to worry about. When in reality, the worst way that they can do it is they can put scripted actors out there and make it seem as if spontaneously these people are going viral and spontaneously everybody's thinking about them, but it's not the way that this works. And so the question only becomes, how many teams are there? Are there multiple groups of people that are gaming the system in this way, or should we just think of it as, basically a national security operation? And that for me is the easiest one. And the reason why I would say that is because of these color pictures in the middle. If you're not familiar, Jayanta Bhattacharya is a man who's now at the head of the National Institutes of Health. It is the big science organization in America. It was the organization that, several $1 billion in budget. And this guy is somebody that I met over the course of the pandemic no less than 4 times. And although he's a nice guy, very pleasant guy, and a very positive guy, he doesn't have the professional requisite expertise to be where Francis Collins was. It's just not possible, because I've spent a lot of time with him, specifically talking about the biology of the pandemic. And it is striking how academic he was, in the sense of regularly deferring to me as the biologist, because he himself is an economist. We have Robert F. Kennedy Jr., with whom I worked for about 1.5 years, including the production of this book, wherein I am listed in the acknowledgments page as the first expert mentioned. I would now make the argument that this book is a fraud, and it was intended to set me up as the lab leak expert, and they would have loved if I would have done that. However, during the course of writing this book, I managed to, in my mind, come up with a much more parsimonious explanation for how the illusion of virology is being created, how the story of virology is being exaggerated to represent, rather than an unknown entity, it's now being regularly represented as something that we have a very high fidelity read on, and we can use PCR to get that high fidelity read. And so the main message of this stream, and the main message from me as a biologist to anybody out there with the requisite expertise to investigate this, I would suggest to you to first try to look at your previous training and realize how you used PCR to prove the presence of something in your research. Because if you used PCR to prove the presence of something, or maybe even you use quantitative PCR to measure the relative presence of something relative to another thing, like 2 proteins, or to see the change in the level of mRNA in a particular cell, or there's lots of ways that PCR is used in an academic bench to demonstrate the change in the presence of, quantity of, or even just a plus and minus read on the presence of a protein or an mRNA. And so if you want to see through this, and you want to see what they've done from the perspective of the pandemic, that's really where to start. But in a much more 30,000 foot perspective, from a perspective of a helicopter, the most important thing to see is that all of the mythologies, all of the questions, all of the debates that we had, all the mysteries that you solved or I solved, over the course of the last 6 years. The vast majority of them have been orchestrated, scripted mysteries where even if the original event happens, the questions that are asked about it, the speculation that occurs, and the perceived consensus that certain questions need to be answered and they're not being answered, those mysteries that are solved on social media are almost exclusively mythology. And without a doubt, the biology of RNA being the basis for what they call a pandemic. And there is no other way to explain a pandemic other than to say that if you spill paint on the ground in your backyard and then a few years later all the houses are the color of that paint, that is chemically, molecularly, and biologically virtually identical to the claim that RNA in the right sequence, if you found it in a cave and brought it back to a laboratory, spilled it in a wet market, sprayed it in the air, whatever, that molecule, because of its unique nature, is able to go endemic, to become part of everything, to be in every school, in every theater, in every train. And that premise is absurd. And we must not pass this premise down to our children. It is a working assumption that we have been coerced into accepting by the mental violence that is the pandemic, the mental violence that was the operation of the pandemic, specifically on social media. Because remember, we were forced to go home. Even our children were forced to go online for school for a year, and this is not by accident. Before the pandemic, the amount of screen time that our children are now regularly engaged in would have been seen as abuse or neglect. Make no mistake about this. The amount of screen time that our children are now spending on a regular basis, and it doesn't matter who you are, if you suck it up and admit it, you will see it. That before the pandemic, we would have never tolerated this. Before the pandemic, none of us did it. We've got to remember this. We are not goldfish. We can remember 6 years ago, dang it. I'm 54. I can remember when I was 48. I can remember when I was 47, 48, 49. You can go back. You can check your freaking phone for the pictures. And so I don't want to pull any punches here. I want to be sure that you understand that there is a reason why America would be the center of, and the ruling class, the overclass in America would be glad to have America be the theater of the pandemic where the vast majority of the number of people died. We have a Health and Human Services Secretary who's happy to go on TV and tell that so many more people died in America than anywhere else on earth because we're so dumb and we're so unhealthy and we're so fat. But none of them ever say it's because we had such an old population of people that had retired and was going to age out, and that the last 6 months of a Medicare patient is about $500,000. And so it's not even about when these people retire, it's about when they die and how expensive it is when they die. And so you might say, oh, well, look, that bump that you're pointing to already is making people retire right there in 2015, but they didn't start killing people. They didn't kill anybody then. And that's because those people were paying. You see, this is a real big problem that we need to understand also from the perspective of other first world nations where their population pyramid data might also be available. It would be very interesting, for example, in the case in point, if the Netherlands has a population pyramid that would have a similar problem in needing a management. Because I know quite a few people who I would say in the Netherlands, there's a good chance that one of the reasons they're not with us anymore is the combination of the mythology of the pandemic, the physical reaction to the pandemic, but also the requirement or coercion to transfect. And especially in old people, they just did it. And of course they did, because there's a population pyramid to manage. That's the same time they're telling you that, well, you know, it's unfortunate because the third world countries aren't getting any vaccines. That's not really fair. Now, at the same time, I want you to see this because this is pretty freaking crazy. Gold is exploding in value via the dollar. Exploding in value. This shape of that curve there in gold, I don't even know what to say. This shape right here, and those bumps right there, and this shape right here, in my mind, they're related in the sense of that's why we had national security scripted actors on podcasts for the last 10 or 15 years. Set up, given elaborate backstories that included, you know, Senate hearings and you know, suing their universities or whatever, setting them up so that they were legitimate podcasters when the pandemic started, not, you know, sons of super rich people connected to other super rich people that are ultimately part of the slaving class. So that's what I think we have here. America is being governed by theater, and it was long before the Obama era of the show. The Obama era of the show is part of the show. They were already doing it to us then. They had a similar phenomenon with Obama going on in the background on social media, with people mad because he wasn't a real black president or he's Muslim or whatever. Just like they do now in the background with Donald Trump. So I'm going to make the argument that the first world is being governed by theater because the first world is using social media gladly, and maybe even, you know, the scary part is that as it expands, you know, we're in big trouble. This is the kroner down here. This is the euro. That's the price in dollars up there. You know, you can look at whatever currency you want to look at. It's not good. These are all 10-year charts here. They're all the same. The dollar, the euro, the Norwegian kroner. Where do you have your money? Because all of them suddenly seem to be losing value, and I don't really know why. It's interesting, but I do think if we wake up now, we still actually have a chance. But America is being sabotaged by podcast actors that are scripted, and specifically they are scripted, but they improvise. You know, if you're told a set of things that you should, you know, kind of ideas, and you're told ideas you're not supposed to say, a really well-trained actor can improvise on that and make it seem as though they're spontaneous ideas, spontaneous questions, spontaneous opinions, when in reality they're scripted. But they'll sound different because they're kind of playing themselves. If I thought that, you know, I could play a Vulcan on the Star Trek Enterprise, and I could try to put myself into the mindset of a Vulcan and pretend that, okay, if I was a Vulcan and I was worried about, you know, something, well, how would I say it, you know? And there's my badge on there, and then I would say something like, I'm very concerned, Captain, because I think some of these people might be frauds on scripts. And so I can pretend, you know, that these people are pretending, you know, well, what if I believed this, you know? And then they make a video about it. They make a podcast about it. They go talk to somebody about it. That's what podcasting is. It is spell casting. It's like it's a very, very nasty place that they've brought us. And I don't know when I can stop broadcasting this particular message. But in the background, I'm working on some other stuff, including a biology book for kids and a biology book, a history book for adults. So if you like what you see here, please go to gigaohmbiological.com, find a way to support. You want to be notified, please send a message to gigaohmhq@proton.me. So just to start out with the Dutch show, the woman there by the name of, what is her name? Herkhoff? No, that's the other lady. This is what is her name? Now suddenly I'm lost. Can somebody put that, what is her name again? Marianne Koopmans, I think is her name. Marianne Koopmans is like this really famous Dutch virologist from the University of Erasmus in Rotterdam. And University of Erasmus in Rotterdam had not too long ago a fight for truth or battle for truth or some bullshit for truth little cafe seminar thing with Kevin McKernan and Jessica Rose from the introduction, just so you know. So it's interesting because just to, give you some homework if you want to prove to yourself how crazy it is, this woman is currently engaged in some kind of Twitter debate with Jayanta Bhattacharya, the Indian man whom I met several times, actually told me to stop saying Robert Malone's name on my stream because he was about to become NIH director. And that actually came true, which is pretty remarkable. They're having a huge debate about, leaving the WHO and whether the WHO was responsible for anything to do with the pandemic or caused any problems. And it's quite remarkable because if you see that as the hamster wheel that it is, those two have essentially made no progress, except for, I guess, agreeing to have a discussion about it on X. This is absurd. And it's more absurd if you just look at the sheer amount of activity that these two pretend to engage in on X, because that means that they're holding their phone a lot, or that they've installed the app on their web browser so that they can really use a keyboard and get after these people. But that doesn't seem like a useful way for the NIH director to spend his time. Yet, if you really investigate Jayanta Bhattacharya, what you're going to find is a guy who also spends an extraordinary amount of time podcasting. He even made a music video where he doesn't even talk, but it's just like win, win, win. I won't even play it here because it's so painful. It's more painful than listening to that Ramaswamy guy do Eminem. And so this is just a tiny example of how social media is used. They create this illusion of a debate, an illusion of consensus that she's wrong, he's right, and then all of these people will retweet it and add their own bullshit underneath, and here's my link to my website when I used to say it. And there is no progress here because they all accept the premise of the national security state narrative. That's the reason why Jayanta Bhattacharya is there. So social media is definitely a trap for your mind. You can't change their script. It's like trying to change the script of the Star Trek show that you watch by sending enough tweets on Twitter or by sending the right, DM message on Instagram. It won't work. Because podcasters are spellcasters. They pretend that they're not on a script. And they tell you that everybody else on stage is. It's a hard message to swallow, but once you swallow it and then start to watch podcasts with this new lens, you will hear the script, you will see the script, and you will be insulted by it. And unfortunately, it will ruin a lot of the internet for you. But it will also reorient you and require you to, or help you to find a new way, a smarter way to use the internet. And again, this is a message for the Netherlands. It's a message for my family over there. And so I'm always going to keep trying to describe what's going on in America to them. In America, we have a number of podcasters. It might be much worse over here than it is over there. And my suspicion is actually that because the Netherlands is one of these places where one of the pride that everybody has is that they can speak and read English quite well. And, the movies in the Netherlands are subtitled in Dutch. They don't overdub in the Netherlands. And so the Netherlands is important for so many reasons. It was the most important, still is the most important port in Europe. If you're going to smuggle things into Europe, you're most likely going to smuggle them through Rotterdam. I've heard stories of companies that were smuggling cocaine into the Netherlands because what they did was they hollowed out huge tractors, right? Like lawn equipment, and then like not lawn equipment, but like landscaping equipment, and they filled the entire machine with cocaine. And then they had containers that were full of these, like 3 of these machines all packed really well. And for a very long time, the machines would come in there and then, I don't know, go somewhere else, inside of the EU to get opened up and then redistributed throughout the EU, but like tons and tons. And so the Netherlands is important for that reason. The Netherlands is important because there is this company in the southern part of the Netherlands that makes all the machines that actually make the machines that make the computer stuff. So, like computer circuits are printed with lasers and all this magic technology. And then there is a machine that makes the machines that does that. And that company is infinitely more of a national security risk than, the Intel shit in Taiwan. And in fact, this company in the Netherlands regularly has like commercial sort of intelligence, about, okay, so how many of your machines did this company order? Because they're competing with other companies that use those machines, that make those machines, and they want to know how many machines those competitors ordered even before the machines are ready to go. And this company is in the Netherlands. That Biden made this big deal about bringing all the manufacturing and computers back to the United States, but the manufacturing has already been under the control of our NATO partner, our most reliable ally. Remember that we almost spoke Dutch in America. The competitor to the East Indies Company is in the Netherlands. It was the Dutch East Indies Company. The Dutch and the English were rivals on the seas for a long time until Dutch sailors on Portuguese boats stole the maps. As far as I understand it, I've been to the Scheepvaart Museum a couple times. I love that place. Look, the Netherlands is like as close as I could be to a second home. This is a book that I got from the guy that supervised my PhD. It says, "Dear Jay, welcome to Amsterdam. I am really happy you got the job and accepted it. I know you and we will have a great 4 years. Science and City. Cheers, man." This is a long time ago. Somehow I think it's possible that the Netherlands might actually be in a perfect position to help America as an ally like never before. Because what I think they've done to America with podcasts, they are going to actually take the Americans that did this and they're going to come over to your country and they're going to pull the same shit over there. They're going to try and create division and doubt, and they're going to do it using social media. And most of the Netherlands might not even be aware that it's happening. But in the background, a lot of the free-thinking, exploring David Icke fans are going to be roped into an American national security global operation to sabotage any resistance to what's coming. And I don't really know what's coming, but I'm pretty sure the euro is going to crash, the dollar is going to crash, and they have to do something about that. So there will be an Amero, and it'll happen over such a time horizon that no one will really notice, but it's coming. It's got to be coming. Otherwise, the gold prices wouldn't be doing that. The silver prices wouldn't be doing that. And it was timed. It was timed with the population pyramid problem. So one of the things we need is the population pyramid of the Netherlands, which I do not have. But let me just suffice it to say that pandemics, COVID in general, gain of function, these are myths that are sustained by social media actors. It doesn't mean that there aren't molecular signals in the background, but it does mean that those molecular signals have been misconstrued as something that they are not. Their fidelity of understanding of those molecular signals has been misconstrued into something that it's not, for a national security purpose, for the Human Genome Project. And so autism spectrum disorder is an elaborate mythology that is, by definition, by all the books that are written on this topic on this bookshelf. It is an extraordinarily plastic, a-specific, umbrella term which describes anything that these people say is that. And that's the opposite of what medicine should be, that's trying to narrow down different sets of causes to specific sets of symptoms. And so we have been bamboozled. All they have to do is put this script into the right people's mouths and have them say it and stay committed to it, and we are here. And unfortunately, that's what the gender spectrum is. That's what this idea of Zionism and there being Zionists out there. I mean, if you just agree to put a bunch of people out there and make sure that they say it, then I guess Zionism exists. And you can blame all kinds of things on it then. Climate change, very similar but weak. One of the biggest myths that I think as a foreigner, not inside of America, it might be harder for you to digest, but Musk, Peter Thiel, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Lucky Palmer, these are all guys that are not real. They are not men that have usurped the banking cartel of Earth. They are not men that have managed to usurp all other delivery and commercial mechanisms to dominate distribution of goods in the first world. They are not people that have also, managed to program their way to the king of social media or invent their way to the AI of magic weapons. Like, this is all elaborate hoaxes. These are national security actors that are simply paid and agreed to play a role. Now, how they select these people or why they're selected, I don't know. I don't care. The point is that you cannot allow your children to grow up and have a childhood where they think those people are real and what they hear about them and see about them on the news is real, because then your children will grow up already enslaved. Not that dissimilar to how we did.
Europa duizelen. Ook in zijn eigen land escaleert het volledig. De immigratiepolitie ICE heeft weer een demonstrant doodgeschoten. En dat leidt tot een harde aanvaring tussen de lokale...
I have discussed this in my previous show, and I just wanted to start it out here to make sure that anybody that saw that show would be reminded that we've already done this Dutch episode of a talk show. It's not really a podcast, but it kind of is. I don't think either of these two is scripted. What I think that these two people are, or these three people are, they believe that something real happens on social media. They believe that there is real news coming out of America and that a lot of the people that they see are real Americans with agency, meaning that they're driving the car and they're steering it where it's going and they're responsible for it. And that is, of course, a terrible working assumption. This is a historian who says that this is not that dissimilar to Mussolini and the Nazis. And that novelist, the essayist, the writer over there, the lady with the blonde hair, actually has a much more nuanced take. She says that there's this front stage and there's this backstage. So she's almost there, except for the fact that she hasn't figured out that the backstage also is responsible for orchestrating a front stage that's on social media. Donald Trump doesn't exist by himself. He exists within the context of a cadre of actors on social media that all have podcasts, that are all scripted to say that Donald Trump is a genius. Donald Trump has better health and higher testosterone than anybody they've ever measured. And even Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is saying that on podcasts. And so these people believe that those people are real. And so these are the conclusions that they come to. But they are not quite there yet, because they think America is absolutely screwed. They think America selected Donald Trump twice. And so we're almost going to shoot ourselves in the foot. And I would say that that is a pretty crazy working assumption that only makes sense because we're all paying attention to social media. I don't think it's ever been more than 50% of America that voted for Donald Trump. A lot of Americans may have voted for Barack Obama, but only because we were convinced of how smart that would be to do. That's not the black American president that America would have chosen, with a real spontaneous, election. That's definitely not. I would have rather voted for the American hero that, like invented all the Nerf guns and because that's an African American guy. He invented all the Nerf toys that matter and all the Super Soaker toys that matter. He's made more people smile and happy with his ideas than almost anybody else in American history, and nobody even knows that guy's name. He's an African American. I would have rather had him. Look, America has done so much and given the world so much. American culture and American people have given the world so much, and we are being led to believe that somehow or another that's gone. That was an illusion, and I'm not willing to do that. No. We are not as screwed as these people want us to believe. Podcasters are not real people. They're need-to-know scripted actors. That's why this graph, look at this graph. How can this graph even exist? Well, that's true. There is an encouragement of being racist as well, but that's also a game that we can beat because that's purebred games. That's purebred games. They are playing purebred games when we are mudbloods. It's basically like Harry Potter. You want to break the illusion, that's the illusion. Mudbloods versus purebloods in Harry Potter. They want you to think that you've got to fight for some pureblood idea like white or black, and that's just ridiculous. That is absolutely toddler level. But they've already got us doing it. They've got lots of people doing it because, of course, they use the term white nationalist. So already that makes white real. And then Joe Rogan says, things about white people and black people. The only person who's ever said it right is the guy, he's in Shawshank Redemption. The black guy in Shawshank Redemption's name is... I'm going to come up with it before the chat because I can think of it. Morgan Freeman, he said it best because, he doesn't want an African American History Month. He asked the guy from 60 Minutes, what are you? You Jewish? Do you want a Jewish History Month? I don't want an The whole year is African American history. I don't want to be called an African American. I don't want to be called black. I agree not to call you white. You agree to not call me black anymore, and this problem goes away. He said that already a long time ago. And it's not wrong because it depends on who I talk to and what I'm talking about, what people assume that I am. And when they find out what I am, it's always a shock. When I went to work in Norway, the first guy that hired me in Oslo thought he had hired the first Native American patch clamping neuroscientist that ever existed. And he was bragging about it to the rest of the faculty. The assumptions that we make, the working assumptions that we make are by definition the trap that we are in if they're not right. Another wonderful example that I have of this is from my dog. My dog is really smart, but when the leash is on his collar, he thinks he can't run away. And so you can actually put the leash on the ground and make the click noise, and he thinks that you've clicked it to something, so he will not run off the porch, even though he's free. And so you can be smart enough to make assumptions, so you don't hurt your neck or so you don't pull the chair off of the porch or, you don't disturb anything. But if those assumptions are wrong, the assumption that, the leash is on my collar so I can't run off the porch, then you're smart enough to be trapped by your assumptions. My dog, Mike, is smart enough to be trapped by his assumptions. And I need you to understand that if you use social media and you are enchanted to believe, to operate under the working assumptions of those social media actors, you will be trapped by those working assumptions. Not any different than my dog Mike is trapped by his assumption that when I make that clicking noise and that rope is hanging there, that it ends right after the steps, so there's no reason to go any farther.
Eva, this is
I was reading this story this morning, and I was thinking, I can't believe they did this to a Dutch journalist. Then I saw the name. I was like, wait, I know her. I can't believe this happened. So I just want, look.
And so Tucker Carlson is a very well-known podcaster in America who used to work on Fox News. When he worked on Fox News in 2021, he promoted a Vanity Fair story about Drastic and listed all the wrong members and all the wrong things. And then he went to podcasting, and he's still going. He's still sabotaging America with contradictory statements and contradictory laughing and contradictory whatever. But I'm wondering if anybody in the Netherlands knows who this girl is, because I think she became kind of famous in the Netherlands during the farmer protest in 2022 or 2023. And that was the first time she actually had somebody in America working with her for quite some time called Big Honey Jan. What is his name? Is it Jan von what? There's a blonde, there's a bald guy that took Brett Weinstein and Chris Martinson to Panama to see all of the immigrants. Yeah, Catherine Austin Fitts has also already been on the Lighthouse TV a few times. So anyway, this woman is one of these podcast actors that is scripted to go around and say stuff. And I am pretty sure that she is a bad person. Michael Young, that's right. Michael Big Honey Young. He was like, that guy was all over with Ava during those farmer protests. And, you know, I mean, you could say that she's accidentally pretty, or you could say that she was recruited because she's pretty and she can speak. But here's him saying, you know, that he's some kind of friend of hers.
I just want to read you back to you the letter that you received from the British government to confirm that you actually received this. It's to you, and it says your UK visa basically has been canceled. This means you cannot travel to the UK without a visa. This is because, I'm quoting, this is because your presence in the UK is not considered to be productive to the public good.
So the same thing that they did to David Icke, supposedly, they're now doing to this Dutch girl, which is absurd, right? But it's an easy way to promote people. It's not that dissimilar to how they promoted Alex Berenson by banning him from Twitter and then allowing him to publicly sue for his account to get back up. It's not that dissimilar to how Brett Weinstein was able to be publicly, you know, I don't know, filmed saying something about DEI at his. It's all the same. These are all staged things. The latest one is, of course, the Somali representative from Minnesota has, I am quite sure, staged a syringe spray attack where right after getting sprayed by the syringe, supposedly she almost chases him down and then twice swears into the microphone. But the trouble is, there's one thing that no one's mentioning that you can mention right now, because again, I'm a real broadcaster. I broadcast on the radio and I broadcast live stream, and that means that I'm managing my own sound here. And so there is without a doubt something wrong with all of those videos of Ilhan from Somalia, because the audio, her particular audio, is so good in every video, it doesn't make sense. And you can go and find all the angles, but even if the audio is all coming from the same microphone, which it should not be, right? Because these are cell phone videos, but the cell phone videos are extraordinarily sharp. They zoom in extraordinarily well and then zoom out extraordinarily sharply and stay really stable. Maybe they have stabilizing iPhone 45s. I don't know. Anyway, the audio's too good. And specifically in the video, you can see that the microphone that's on the podium is a condenser microphone. The microphone that I use is not a condenser microphone like that, because I'm going to risk screwing this up here. It is a directional microphone. See, look how that works. You see that? You see it? It only picks up a cone from the front. And a condenser microphone is even more sensitive than that. It only picks up sound from like maybe 5 inches away. I mean, it's not, sorry, that's probably going to be banging now because the mic's not right. But that sound, by definition, if it was good when her mouth was really close to the condenser microphone and everybody in the room can hear me, okay, I'm going to speak. Then if she's back here and there's a big security guy in between her, then you're not going to hear that. Now this microphone, it's a little bit high there. I can back up farther, and because it projects, it gets that cone, I can stay in the cone. You can still hear me pretty good. That's not how condenser mics work. I'm sorry, but it's just not. Condenser mics work a bit like this mic works from the side, in that only if you're very close will you hear it. And that's the reality of things. And so this stage is absolutely crowded with people who claim to be fighting for freedom or for conservative values. And the Netherlands has at least one example, this Eva Vlaardingenbroek.
You could not appeal this decision. Did you actually receive that letter?
I did, and relatively out of the blue too. I mean, I was going through my emails yesterday, and I saw the subject line saying that they changed something to my ETA application. I was like, what is this? I didn't apply for an ETA. I'm not, planning on traveling to the UK right now. So I just opened it and I saw this you have the email. It's a very short, simple email. And it just said, we revoked your ETA because we consider you not conducive to the public good and you have no right to appeal. Bye. That was it. And so...
Well, there's a difference, right? And I'm just addressing somebody in the chat there. What clip am I talking about? On social media currently right now, there is a little thing going around that apparently Ilhan was giving a speech in Minnesota, and somebody in the very front row stood up and squirted her in the chest with something in a syringe and said something that is inaudible in the video. But what is audible is all of the things that Ilhan says. Now, that could be in one video and not in another video, but instead what you're seeing across the internet are videos that all have pretty much equivalent audio. The only person you can really hear is Ilhan. This is not by accident, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry, but we are being set up, and if you are on social media trying to solve the mysteries that they are creating, you are going to be stuck in it. So you don't want to argue with this stuff. You don't want to argue about it. I'm just telling you that that's what's going on right now. And not that dissimilar to this. You don't want to get into this. You don't want to waste time trying to figure out if Tucker is bad, but Ava's not, because they are all wittingly or unwittingly, they're all basically part of it.
I was like, what? What is this? And then, I started thinking, like, what could this be? Why are they sending this to me now? And then I realized that I criticized Keir Starmer a couple days earlier on
Okay, so I think what's most important is that my message from my podcast work over the last 6 years can be summarized in a few slides. And so I would like to be sure, so that I maintain this unblemished record of track record of integrity, that in this stream I also explain it. So I think it's very important to understand that the pandemic did not happen, but people were killed, but also people were expected to die. And that built-in expectation for a rise in all-cause mortality is the single most important thing in the theater. Because if the lady on stage is not actually cut in half because she curls up into half of the box, then your working assumption that those are really her feet wiggling there are the end of your understanding. And once you understand that she is capable of curling up into half of the box, now you can see through all of the rest of the trick and understand that the rest of the trick is essentially meaningless. If you understand that they took advantage of something that was already going to happen and told you it was something else, then you can see through the magic trick. And it has taken me 6 years of hard work to understand it this way. But it's very simple because the pandemic is a myth, and they actively sustained the mystery-solving exercise, which got everybody to accept the questions and the premises. And so, as I've said before, all of these myths, but pandemics in particular as an example, are sustained by social media actors. And specifically, the accomplishment that they have from this is that PCR is being used as a diagnostic throughout the first world. It is accepted as a diagnostic when in fact it is not. It's not a good diagnostic. And there might be some out there that are good for some things, but the way that it is applied is it is applied in such a way that also accepts the premise that PCR defined the pandemic, that there was no fraud there, that we don't need to recalibrate our understanding of what happened over the last 6 years because PCR worked. And that was accomplished because of the usurping, the sabotage of the FDA in America. Because, as you know, the same reason why the rest of the world kind of just accepted transfection or the idea of it was because the FDA did. It is a gold standard organization that now has at its head a few foreigners, and that's not good. That's the reality of it. In case you're in the Netherlands, you don't realize that there are people without American passports at the head of the FDA, which would be the organization that would expose this fraud. And there are people with foreign passports at the head of the NIH, which is also remarkable. The former director of the Global Human Genome Project, discoverer of the genes for cystic fibrosis, was, and longtime colleague of Tony Fauci, was replaced by Jayanta Bhattacharya, a glorified economist who's done a few flu papers. This is extraordinary where America is. We need some help from our closest allies. And so it's important to see that,
computational biology,
listen,
biochemistry, and
she claims to have 5 degrees. She was on stage with all of these people, including the mother of Soph, Sasha here, including Aseem Malhotra, a UK cardiologist who was recruited and playing the role of a whistleblower on the mRNA. But his own dad took the shot because of his advice. Millions probably of people in the EU took his advice. That's Jessica Rose, who I believe is playing the role of Epigirl, described in the SPARS pandemic document. Again, that's homework. Before there was ever a real pandemic, there was the SPARS exercise, and the SPARS exercise post-epidemic had a social media personality called Epigirl who was exposing the injuries due to the countermeasures. And that's what she's doing, and she is scripted by Robert Malone there on the far right. And Robert Malone is one of the scripted national security scripters that's behind Children's Health Defense and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and for sure also Jayanta Bhattacharya. It seems to indicate that somewhere in the playing cards is the Commonwealth of Nations and the City of London and probably India. But we are being governed by these scripted actors, these podcast actors. There's no way that Marty Makary at the head of the FDA should be there, because all he did for the pandemic was podcast with other clowns. And in fact, his second in command at the FDA is a guy that he podcasted with during the pandemic. This is not acceptable. Yet somehow or another, that's where we are in America. And the people that put those people in America to sabotage our institutions and to discredit them, those people are now traveling to the Netherlands and spreading the same nonsense over there. Again, Kevin McKernan and Jessica Rose were there a couple weeks ago. This guy here in the middle, Geert van den Bosch, is actually a Belgian who used to work at Solvay with Robert Malone. And so these are all a single group of people. Now, the most interesting thing is the Earth is being played. They are using social media to use these podcast actors on any country that shows a vulnerability. And the Netherlands is showing a vulnerability. And the Netherlands has this thing called Lighthouse TV that used to call itself Black Box TV, but now they have Lighthouse TV, and this is only 7 months old. But already after 7 months, the same national security scripted actor, Del Bigtree, who stepped in front of Brandy Vaughn and Tony Bark already back in 2017, 18, 19, with the movie Vaxxed in 2016 and the ICANN organization, and helped Children's Health Defense form from the World Mercury Project. These were all organizations that were formed because of a national security priority need to step in front of people like Brandy Vaughn, a whistleblower from Merck, and Tony Bark, a whistleblower from Russ Presbyterian Emergency Hospital Room in Chicago, Illinois. Those two were both killed in 2020 as part of the house cleaning necessary so that the narrative of the pandemic could be effectively controlled. Brett Weinstein is somebody that I was in a Signal chat with in 2020 and 2021 and then abandoned me to, I guess, save the universe or save the United States or save the free world, which he has not done. His father is actually a very interesting intellectual property expert from America who was the first lawyer appointed to the Department of Justice as an intellectual property lawyer by the father of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Robert F. Kennedy. So Lighthouse TV has been recruited. You can see that
Hi
here.
there. I'm Del Bigtree. I'm the host of the internet talk show, thehighwire.com.
You will remember from my intro that I showed you that the very typical thing that's done where Robert Malone and Del Bigtree are on a podcast together talking about how there are chaos agents and, there are some bad guys that inevitably in our line of work we run into, and both of them are long-time national security scripted actors. And in fact, I would put my future, all of it, on the line to say that Robert Malone is ultimately the guy who was behind the script that Del Bigtree has been on since he started. The script that has been pushed by Meryl Nass since she started is Robert Malone's script. And that's why Meryl Nass has been behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Mary Holland since they got together and made Children's Health Defense to absorb somebody by the name of Lisa Bono, who was also probably a pretty good lady, but just had no idea what she was getting involved with. And they also used Brian Hooker to do the same thing. Brian Hooker is a long-time government scientist who was using transfection and transformation to try and make medicine in plants before he became an anti-vaxxer and eventually one of the heads of CHD and behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And certainly not all of these people can be good. Catherine Austin Fitts, promoted obsessively by CHD and ICANN. The Netherlands is very important because their former prime minister is now the head of NATO, which might be one of the organizations that was used to conduct the pandemic. This guy is also someone who has podcasted an extraordinary number of hours and very specifically podcasted and promoted an extraordinary number of times Robert Malone and Peter McCullough and Pierre Corey and Brett Weinstein and all the people that are part of this American cast of scripted traders. And they are now all coming to the Netherlands to try and fool anybody that needs to be fooled. That's this guy.
Vandaag kondig ik met heel veel pijn in mijn hart mijn vertrek bij Blackbox aan. Een keuze waarin ik ben gemanoeuvreerd door de laatst overgebleven...
Nou, ik kan niet goed Nederlands praten, ik kan niet goed Nederlands verstaan, maar voor mij is die energie van dit man vals. Het is dramatisch en exaggerated, het is gewoon onzin. En later in dit video zegt hij dat hij nu werkloos is en dat dat wel iets voor zijn hart doet. Luister.
Het is mijn kindje en ik heb het gebracht waar het nu is en daar ben ik trots op.
Oh, it's his kid. It's my kindje and I'm so proud of where I brought it, but now I've got to leave because they want to make shows that I don't want to make.
Om hulp vanwege de financiële problemen bij Blackbox. En toen mijn bestuursfunctie en in de meest kwetsbare positie ooit zat, kreeg ik een mail. En daarin stond dat er eenzijdig door de enige actieve bestuurder nog, een nieuw bestuur was geïnstalleerd. Afgezien van...
So we're supposed to believe that this guy got thrown out or, it's taken away from him. And so he started the lighthouse because, screw Black Box, they're not friendly to me.
Akkoord kon gaan. Ik heb heel duidelijk aangegeven dat ik een nieuw bestuur accepteer, maar niet de mensen waarmee ik in 2022 een conflict heb gehad en die mij eruit wilden werken. En sterker nog, toen de koers van Blackbox wilde wijzigen en inhoudelijk totaal andere programma's wilde gaan maken. Daar heb ik toen voor gevochten en daar heb ik ook in een later stadium voor gevochten. Om het DNA van Blackbox te bewaken.
He wants to protect the DNA of Blackbox. He wants to keep it on track.
Opnieuw te gebeuren, maar dan wel zonder mij, want ik heb voor mezelf gekozen. Voor mijn eer, voor mijn ziel, die niet te koop is, maar ook niet gecorrumpeerd.
This is 7 months ago, so instead of choosing for principals in 2020, instead of being, I don't know, a guy at a medical school who lost his job for speaking out, he's now making a sacrifice in 2025? Really? It almost sounds like Robert Malone, in 2022, making a sacrifice or something like that. Or Brett Weinstein speaking out in 2023 or something like that. It's just absurd. You only need look at their track records to understand how absurd it is that this guy supposedly has principles in 2025. Give me a break.
Kan worden door geld of angst. Want ik ben nu werkloos. Ik heb geen inkomen meer.
And you can hear that, right, Nederlanders? Je kennen dat, die liedje gehoord. Die liedje dat hij speelt. Het is gewoon niet te geloven dat hij dat liedje keuze voor dit, oh wow.
Zorgen om mij. Ik red me wel. Ik heb weliswaar geen inkomen meer, maar ik voel...
It's like a song that you would play at somebody's funeral. That I can imagine easily somebody from Holland wanting that song to be played at their funeral, and he's, co-opting it for this bullshit. That's how you can see that he has no good intentions. But now, when I point out to you that Lighthouse TV has hosted all of these people, has put up all of those images, including a pentagram with a... Are you kidding?
Werken daar fantastisch.
And so health freedom movement only exists on social media, and this trick is going to be played in the Netherlands. It may already being played. It may have been played with the farmers' protests, and now they're going to again roll out a new thing where these people are going to become aware of the DNA contamination in the mRNA shots. This is terrible because they will never make any progress. The argument will divide your country, and more importantly, eventually be used to discredit the people who make the argument. Make no mistake about it. The health freedom movement in America and around the first world accepts a novel virus pandemic. It accepts something had to be done. It accepts that people died from the pandemic and from what was done. It accepts that the tests can find the stuff that does pandemics, and it accepts that safe vaccines are a worthy goal, even if we don't have them yet. And once you're aware of that, then you understand why maybe there's only one good guy in the world. Maybe it's only Wolfgang Wodach and Mark Kulak in Boston and Jonathan Couey in Pennsylvania and Joe Marshall up in New York. And that's it. Could be that's it. The fake populist conservative thing on the internet is definitely dumb. The idea that Stephen Miller married somebody named Amy is dumb. It exists only on social media, ladies and gentlemen. It only exists on social media. It hasn't saved anyone, doesn't have any priorities. That's why it's so easy for them to fractionate it now, with Tim Pool going one way and Megyn Kelly going another. And it's easy because it was always designed to do that. And now they're doing it in the Netherlands. 1 month ago, Lighthouse TV spent an hour trying to convince the Netherlands that Charlie Kirk was a covered-up murderer of some kind worth investigating.
Dit programma is mede mogelijk gemaakt door ECA Klimaattechniek, Bundel, Moringa's Finest, Pro Privacy en Holland Gold.
Wat klopt er niet aan de moord op Charlie Kirk? Is de 22-jarige Tyler Robinson wel de echte dader? En was hij überhaupt wel in staat om een dodelijk schot als deze af te vuren? Waarom was er geen bloed te zien? En waarom werd Charlie Kirk met een zwarte SUV weggevoerd?
And of course, the crazy thing is that what is promoted in this video was the start of the nonsense in America. And then there have been podcasters arguing about other podcasters, arguing about Candace, arguing about Tucker, about this since it happened, which, as you recall, was the 10th of September. So that's a long time to be focused on a single dead guy that everybody kind of agrees, I don't know, did or didn't die. Just like everybody agrees that Donald Trump was definitely shot. There was definitely a virus. Elon Musk is definitely smart. Oh my goodness, it's just super hard to catch it on film. Ladies and gentlemen, this is really ugly, but it's worth doing. So I apologize, but I've got to do it for my friends and family in the Netherlands, because this is the way that we break this illusion. This is from only like a month ago.
Dit programma is mede mogelijk gemaakt door ECA Klimaattechniek, Bundel, Moringa's Finest, ProPrivacy en Holland Gold.
Welkom bij een speciale uitzending van Lighthouse TV, hier vanuit Antropia in Driebergen, waar dit hele weekend een internationaal congres wordt georganiseerd, Back to the Future, georganiseerd door het Artsencollectief. Verschillende sprekers deden hun inzichten, waaronder Jona Walk, Theo Schetters, Tess Laurie, Matthias Smet en Dr. Robert Malone. Wie is deze eigen gereide arts en wat doet hij in Nederland? Kijk mee naar dit exclusieve interview voor Lighthouse TV met Dr. Robert Malone.
We good? We're rolling?
Dr. Malone, welcome to the Netherlands, and thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us. In preparing...
Now remember, this is supposed to be a guy who knew the truth already years and years and years ago. And yet, let's see if we can, hear it. Because remember, I start this podcast always for the last many years with what I think is a good elevator pitch of the truth. And it's come a long way in 6 years. This guy has been on stage on many more podcasts than me. Many more hundreds of hours of live camera time talking about this stuff. And his progress has been abysmal.
For this conversation, I heard you say in a podcast that you were accused of being a mass murderer.
It's true.
And not just that, from both sides. So on the one hand, there's the people that thought you made the mRNA vaccine, but also on the other side, the people that were angry with you because you criticized the vaccine. What is that like?
It's just another day in the life. This has become normal for me. The paradoxes of social media and the hate speech. I mean, let's call it what it is. The rampant hate speech that goes on. People on both sides have called for me to be executed, tried and executed.
Wow.
It's a fascinating world we live in now.
It is.
Where there are things that are prohibited from being said, including discussing the fundamentals of medical ethics and how they apply to the worldwide response to this event that we call COVID, or the nature of the technology. Those are forbidden from being discussed, or whether the technology is toxic, but yet it's still acceptable to call for people to be executed.
And this was the censorship you're talking about. This was 5 years ago, but it still is going on. Exactly the same?
It comes in waves around broader political context. And so since the election of Donald Trump and the confirmation of Secretary Kennedy, and then my having been appointed to this advisory committee to the CDC, the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, there has been a whole new wave of this hate and attacks and delegitimization. It's fascinating to watch it now over time, the development of the methodology that's used, and the language around it, the rollout of more and more sophisticated bot attacks, the weaponization and use of artificial intelligence, the evolution of my Wikipedia page, which is just fascinating to watch, the blow by blow as the hidden editors add whatever they want to add. Some of the same people that wrote very ugly, defamatory things in corporate media against me 4 years ago are now started writing another round of attacks, the same people, in the same journals, just this last 6 months. And
do you ever get used to this?
I guess do I get used to it, or do I become, I think it'd be more accurate to say I've just...
Remember, this is supposed to be a guy who had an illustrious career, but not really, because he's also homesteaded 5 different farms, has a business where he breeds horses and even can sell semen, has a farm, not too far from all the other spies and government employees for NSA in Northern Virginia, just, on the border of a national park, and claims to be a guy who just wanted to breed emus until the pandemic started and finally reluctantly stepped into the spotlight and took one for the team. This is a terrible lie.
Stop lying!
I mean, it's a really terrible lie. And now he's going over to the Netherlands and basically telling a very false story about who he is, what he did, what he does, what his role is, when in reality, from the very beginning, he was involved in establishing every step along the way. If you think about getting everybody to accept that there was a pandemic that was defined by PCR, and the problem was solved with a wide variety of responses, some of which were inappropriate, and then think of it like a rushing river. And the truth is that that's all bullshit. But the only way that you can get over that river is by this stone, and by that stone, and by that stone, and by that stone. And so with these scripted actors carefully coercing everybody from one stone to another stone, to another stone. Not only did they get everybody to cross the river, and by the time they were on the other side of the river, they had accepted all the working assumptions of a pandemic and public health and our global interrelatedness. Not only that, but they wasted so much time because they were told to be very careful because you don't want to fall into the rushing water. When in reality, the water was really warm and it wasn't rushing that much, and just out of sight were a bunch of really comfortable, floating chairs with unopened but ice-cold beers in them. And they didn't want you to know that. So come on now, the next step, come over here, and the next step. And these people did that. Robert Malone's team did that to Americans and to other people around the world, orchestrated an elaborate mystery-solving exercise that even included Rand Paul and Tony Fauci performing in front of Congress about lies and whatever and whatever. That was all part of this. They are one team because this guy goes all the way back to the scientists that defined AIDS.
Kind of come to expect it.
And of course, you might be aware, and if you're not, you should be, that the Dutch cadre of HIV experts was all killed on one suspicious plane crash not too many years ago. I think right before the pandemic, actually.
And I'm a little bit numb to it. And it's just become a part of daily life.
Yeah. Most of our viewers will know who you are, but it's not easy to find neutral information on if there is such a thing. Neutral.
That's kind of like how Tucker Carlson laughs. Neutral information. How about just real information? one of the places you might go for real information is he's worried about Wiki. Maybe he could go to a better website, like this one. I would suggest you go to this website, which is a website called Housatonic. It's google.com, Housatonicits.com, does home/research. We can just get that and put it in the chat. Just take a look here. And it's a very useful website. You can use the alphabet here, and you can just go to M's for Robert Malone, and we can find out a bunch of stuff about Robert Wallace Malone. And this is a website, of course, that will give you a better idea than just his wiki, although his wiki is captured here. But there's a lot of other stuff here. It would be interesting for Robert Malone or somebody that interviews him to ever know something useful about his history. But I suspect that we don't have to worry about it. I suspect, actually, that Robert Malone is going to start tripping because he's actually very confident that his spell can't be broken. But I assure you, I can break it. Oh, I didn't hit chat. There it goes. There we go. Just Housatonic.live works. Okay, good. Thank you, Mark, for putting that in the chat.
Yeah, you could read my CV or my website or
who would do such a thing?
My publications or the patents.
Or I could ask you, because you are here. Now, what exactly was your role with the mRNA technology back in the day? Because all kinds of information is going on, but what was it? It had nothing to do with the vaccine, that's for sure.
No.
Sorry, let me get this up again just to make sure we have it there. Yes, that's that one. And then we also have this one. And then we will just push this down for now.
Just historically, back in the 1980s, I had come out of a laboratory that was working on issues of breast cancer and the role of a retrovirus, mouse memory tumor virus, in a mouse model. And that's where I really learned how to do science. That happened to be the same laboratory that did the very first discoveries about the role of a retrovirus in a immunodeficiency syndrome in non-human primates at UC Davis. So I really, as I was accepted into medical school and into a medical scientist training program, I was passionate that I would take these skills and knowledge that I have and apply them to the development of gene therapies for childhood diseases.
I mean, they have 5 sponsors for this. He's not workless. He was recruited. Everything was already there for him. That's the reason why they used that wonderful voice in the beginning. This podcast is sponsored by. So he is, again, editing his history to make it seem like he is just a hero and a genius, a polymath of everything.
Inborn errors of metabolism. And I was accepted at UC Davis, which had 2 of the top gene therapy programs. I'm sorry, UC San Diego, which had 2 of the top gene therapy programs in the world at the time. One of them was at the Salk Institute under Inder Verma. And
Inder Verma being the most important Indian geneticist on Earth. Indian geneticist involved in the Human Genome Project. Indian geneticist awarded all of the awards. Like, he is the Indian geneticist if you're going to list him on the Hall of Fame. And so he did his postdoc with him. He got PTSD from that guy.
Went through my rotations and then was eventually accepted to work in the laboratory of Inder Verma.
Yeah.
So it's a gene therapy lab. I wanted to be a gene therapist.
He thought that they would be using retroviruses in 10 years at every hospital in the world to cure genetic diseases. He says this in his first Dutch interview 3 years ago. You could find it if you wanted to. It's with Theo Schutters.
And a pediatrician, but it was extremely competitive. I was the only graduate student, and I don't think Inder's had another graduate student since. In that kind of a pressure cooker postdoc laboratory, it was important to find a niche that wasn't going to compete with the other people that I could work on as a graduate student. So I worked on issues of how retrovirus RNA gets assembled. And in order to do that, I wanted to take a rigorous genetic approach, a modern approach, but that would require that I had the ability to produce RNA and deliver it into cells, in this case, packaging cells for retrovirus.
Packaging cells. Do you hear it? This is absolutely bullshit. And in fact, it is brilliant. Because what he is admitting here is that he was part of a cadre of scientists who, when the people who worked on bacteria and bacteriophage genetics basically stalled out and failed, there was a requirement for them. A requirement, because what happened at the end of that period was that they realized that the microbiome interacted with the entire human system. The microbiome, via bacteriophages, is able to interact with our immune system, and our immune system is able to feed back to it by selectively allowing certain bacteriophages to exist and mounting immune responses to others. This is separate from any immune response to any particular bacteria, but instead it is a molecular interaction and regulatory point between the decomposition-composition window that occurs in our gut. It is a primary part of what it means to be a living pattern integrity. And insects have it, plants have it, we have it. It is at the foundation, at the constitutional level, it is a molecular interaction between a ecosystem of bacteria, which may very well be almost exclusively molecular entities, and our own irreducibly complex entity that is ourselves. And that's what the immune system is primarily for. It is for the interface between our molecular microbiome, which is a term coined by one of those geniuses, Joshua Lederberg, who he is supposed to stand in front of and pretend never existed. Just like Luria, Salvador Luria never existed. Just like all of these people and all of these books never existed. There was no book about phages. We don't use phages for anything. Antibody phage display, what's that? We don't need to worry about that. That doesn't mean anything. Ladies and gentlemen, this whole thing is about to tumble down, and it's about to tumble down because it is held up exclusively by actors like Robert Malone, who have a spectacular, decades-long commitment to the lie. The lie that RNA virology is some kind of high-fidelity science, that the essential tool is recombinant DNA manufacturing. The ability to use bacteria, that's right, the target of all the investigations of all the scientists after the Manhattan Project, to go to the final rules of life and all the rules of the universe. They went to bacteria and tried to figure it out, and they failed. And instead identified another layer of the irreducible complexity they had no hope of cracking. And now we're supposed to go forward believing it's as simple as DNA and a linear tape and some proteins that self-assemble. And this guy is part of that illusion. Part of the illusion of consensus that we found DNA, and I guess that means that, we came from a mud puddle and bacteria and, 3 billion phylogenetic years later, here we are. That is absurd. But it is how they will enslave our children. That's how they enslaved me for my whole life, getting me to believe in that story, that because we found DNA, evolution is real. That's not right. But here he is telling you that story right now. He's going to tell you that he was investigating the packaging mechanisms of retroviruses by transfecting cells with recombinantly manufactured, artificially manufactured RNA. He is investigating the packaging of recombinant, artificially produced RNA. and calling that a retroviral packaging mechanism. He's just telling you the truth, that when you transfect cell cultures, they will take that DNA or that RNA that you transfected them with and package it and excrete it. Maybe because that's what they do with a lot of other things that they have inside of them. Maybe it's a very normal process that had a name before the pandemic, exosomes. Maybe it's a normal process in the brain where RNA is packaged and then sent from activated neurons to nearby neurons that aren't activated, so that at least they have the requisite RNA to react if they should be activated. See, we've discovered things that we're not talking about, and we keep making zero progress from DNA to RNA to protein. And in fact, this guy's primary job now is to reinforce that DNA to RNA to protein myth all around the world as an undisputed authority whose mentorship and training goes all the way back to the pantheon of vaccinology and virology and all these things. And he's just a misunderstood bioethics whistleblower.
Stop lying!
And that tech didn't exist. There was technology for DNA delivery. There was technology for DNA manufacturing. But manufacturing large-scale RNA and delivering it into cells and culture was not something that existed. And so I set about to make that happen. Yes. And along the course of that, had a series of novel findings and developed the technology platform for making large quantities of highly pure RNA, delivering them into cells.
I'm not sure that he invented the way of making large quantities of pure RNA. I bet you that's a lie, because that's a Human Genome Project thing. That's what Kevin McKernan and all those guys figured out, because in order to do the sequencing, you first have to do PCR and amplify each part of the human genome that you want to sequence into enough molecules so that you can do the sequencing in the first place. So there's no way in Sam hell that this guy is the guy who invented the process of making large quantities of RNA, but he's saying that right now.
And designing them so that they could be used to produce large quantities of protein. So the structure of mRNA.
Of course, large quantities of protein would be, that's the transfection that Brian Hooker was doing when he was working at a government laboratory for 16 years trying to make medicine in plants. He was transfecting and transforming plants so that they would manufacture protein medicine, protein biologics. All of these people that are involved in the fake health freedom movement in America that have sabotaged the movement of, who knows, vaccine damaged moms and whatever, they've sabotaged it all. And they're all connected to the Human Genome Project, to the government Department of Energy laboratories, to sequencing and to recombinant DNA. Everything else is smoke and mirrors. The only thing they can do is make a lot of DNA or RNA in a relatively pure quantity and put it in places. They can then find it. It's real easy. Just like if I bought 10 books of the Wuhan cover-up and put them all over your house, you'd find them there. Because that's how it works. If I threw them in your backyard and told you to go look, you'd find them there. If I put them in the back seat of your car and told you to look, you'd find them there. And that's all they can do.
RNA capping and all those kinds of things. Because I was helping to teach an embryology course in which I had to prepare various types of embryos for the undergraduate students, I had leftover frog embryos and chick embryos. And so I decided to test whether or not this same technology that would work in every cell line that I tested would also work in embryos. And that led to the first delivery into animals. And then some other things happened in the laboratory where I discerned that...
I really believe that this is bullshit. There might be some truth to this, but for the most part, he is just, claiming that he invented PayPal and that's why everybody doesn't use banks anymore. It's just stupid. It's absolutely preposterous, but it's especially malevolent because here we have a guy who is scripted to reinforce the bad biology 101, DNA, RNA, protein, evolution. So it's important, remember, that he said that he was being threatened. He writes a Substack. Substack is a way for Americans and other people around the world to get paid with not being really paid and not really having followers, but just having a national security job. And even I would go so far as to say people probably sell their likeness and that he's not even writing a lot of the Substacks that get printed in his Substack. It's certainly not also touring the world and also breeding emus and also selling horse sperm and also, chairing the ACIP and also going to Rome and also going to Hawaii. So this is a Substack where his wife complains because there were some people in the audience who were threatening Bob. And so I'm going to read from up here. Unfortunately, the only real negative event on the whole trip happened that night. As we were sitting in the reserved seating in the front row, there wasn't a green room. Robert was approached by a woman yelling at him. She started off by saying she was a huge fan of Sasha L., one of Robert Malone's hater influencers. Now understand, that's a lie. That's a scripted lie. Sasha Latipova first made contact with me in 2022 pretending to be a whistleblower, then went on stage with Robert Malone and Meryl Nass and all of those people that I showed you and tried to blow the whistle on this operation. And they were sitting right next to each other, agreeing with each other. They probably traveled on the same flight and stayed in the same hotel room. And now we're supposed to believe that Sasha Latipova is saying that Robert Malone's a bad guy. And that's absurd. That's exactly how this is done. The cast accuses other members of the cast. They sue other members of the cast for $25 million, and then that gets publicized. But if they're suing other members of the cast, then it doesn't matter. They call other members of the cast traitors or liars or whatever, and then it doesn't matter because as long as they're pushing attention to the other part of the stage, you're never going to look away. And so it becomes obvious if I just highlight the number of times that they type Sasha's name in this article. It's not as if you can't find it by now. It's not as if she won't be in the comments at the bottom arguing with anybody and everybody that she can argue with, or at least somebody like a room full of Indians will be down there arguing with people on Sasha's behalf. Maybe that's what her daughter does now with her time. But the most important thing to see is that over the last 5 years, Substack and X and accounts on Substack and X and chat groups and Telegram and Signal have been used to create an illusion. One of the illusions is that Robert Malone has 50,000 followers on Substack, which means he makes like $100,000 a month just typing, which is absurd. But the funny thing is the head of the NIH also had a Substack that he started during the pandemic called Illusion of Consensus, which he directly stole from my presentations after he had already met me a couple times in person at an arranged meeting, probably at an organization that wouldn't otherwise exist if it wasn't necessary to try and fool me. It all sounds a little crazy when I say it out loud, maar ik ben niet gek hoor. Dit is echt iets heel belangrijk en ook heel gevaarlijk. Amerika is in gevaar, Nederland is in gevaar, alles dat wij denkt over de wereld is in gevaar. En het is in gevaar omdat de waarheid is niet aanwezig. Where did those words come from? Wow. And so this is not funny,
in applied
okay?
mathematics, immunology, computational
First and
biology.
foremost, these are not real degrees. She did postdocs. She's a NATO-funded scientist who's also an Israeli, who has never spoken out about how the Israeli public was used as guinea pigs at the start of the pandemic. This is all an illusion that is sustained by these people that are now and probably already were unleashed on the Netherlands, that include even Eva Vlardingbroek. They're not real people. The earth is being played. The whole first world is being played by podcast actors.
Is going on exactly the same?
It comes in waves around.
You did all this. Would you do it the exact same way now, knowing what
the focus of the company using whatever gene therapy? Yes. And so these two things came together, and I realized that RNA could be used as a drug.
Now, I want to assure you that this is part of the narrative that he's been, basically made no progress from here. RNA could be used as a drug. Kevin McKernan was scripted to say that it would be a pro-drug, and that's also just scripted, not quite. We're still not calling it what it should be called, what it's called in all the titles of all of his papers. It's transfection. And the reason why we're not calling it that, in case you're not aware, is that would mean that the intellectual property is more than 20 years old, and there wouldn't be any reason to have any patents, and there would be no value in this technology at all. It would be unpatentable. But because we're pretending it's new, and this guy is pretending it's kind of new because Peter Cullis did something new and not bothering to voice anything about it, then we're not realizing that the intellectual property represented by all this stuff is nonsense. And that even the intellectual property of, let's say, a PCR diagnostic is actually based on nonsense. He is specifically out there. Robert Malone, Kevin McKernan, Meryl Nass, Jessica Rose, Theo Schutters, Geert van den Bosch, they are all out there as scripted actors, wittingly or unwittingly, scripted never to understand the real heart of the issue. And maybe it's because they trust these people. Maybe they have a personal signal chat with Robert Malone, which makes it feel really authentic, like the guy's really trying to give them the truth. That's how they do it.
It was a whole new pharmaceutical category, and that of the applications for that, the one that would be easiest to make work, the entry-level or low-hanging fruit application, was to use this tech for vaccination purposes.
Did you ever expect it to be developed in the way that it did decades later?
I had expected it to be developed decades earlier. The patents were filed and the first reduction to practice, and this also included the use of RNA without the cationic lipid component, with and without. The first reduction to practice for using RNA for vaccines happened at the company that I joined when I left the Salk Institute, called Vical. I was one of the first employees. And then there was
Now you can go to that same website that I mentioned a little while ago, and that's this one, and you can go to the M's, and when you go to the M's, you can go to Robert Malone, and then there will be stuff about Vical down here, I think, somewhere as well. Patents issued. In the timeline, you're going to see Vical at some point here. There's Solvay. Here it is. That's the one. Work experience, Etheria, Ebola vaccine, and medical director of this and that. There's Epivax, which is this lady DeGroot from Rhode Island. I think they were in Rhode Island, right? Chesapeake, I don't know where they were. Quest Diagnostics, which is also something that's really active right now, right? This is, I don't know where it is, but it's on here. I know it's on here. Sorry, Mark, I'm not so well prepared with the up near the top associations. Okay. References, associations. Oh yeah, here it is. There we go. And so he's saying Vical. And so Mark also has a Vical page. So it's strange, right? Because even I am always surprised when I go to Mark's website and I think, I wonder if Mark's got anything about this. He's got stuff about all of this. I don't want to distract too much. I just want to keep giving shout outs to the Mark man.
Decision because it was not the focus of the company. Vical was antivirals and calcitonin analogs. Had nothing to
Calcitonin is also related to parathyroid hormone. One of the most important things in the body is the regulation of calcium, because calcium is such an important signaling molecule. So just to put that into perspective, what he's talking about there, calcitonin analogs.
to do with vaccines or gene therapy or anything else. So I kind of came up with all this. It was outside of the scope of the company. And so the company decided to sell that off because they needed cash. And they contacted, among others, the company called Merck. And Dr. Maurice Hilleman, who is one of the most significant vaccinologists in the 20th century, and Merck decided that
Maurice Hilleman was at Merck when they bought the spin-off of Vical. Excuse me, what? So let's see if my boy, I'm sure he does, has a thing about Maurice Hilleman, because this guy, oops, I just go to the H's. This guy is very interesting, as I remember. Maurice Ralph Hilleman is an advisor to Paul Offit, a advisor to Margaret Liu. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy. Hilleman's very old. He is responsible for the one of the pioneers of the contamination. He made the mumps vaccine, that's right, and the hepatitis B one as well, which is also a Merck product. Don't forget again that Brandy Vaughn, the dead woman, is also a Merck whistleblower. So this guy, even, I think he even had like a collection of shrunken heads in his office. A very interesting dude. He's behind Anthony Fauci. One of the best kept secrets among the public is that in the field of vaccinology, nobody was more influential than Hilleman. So it's very interesting to think that actually Robert Malone is directly connected to Paul Offit, Hilleman, which also means he's also connected directly to Plotkin, which is just remarkable, because instead of being a whistleblower, he's actually a decades-long insider, and he's admitting it.
That they would take a license for this from Vical for a considerable amount of money, but that Merck's scientists had to be the ones that would take credit for the technology and the initial discoveries. And so some initial papers came out from Merck involving influenza vaccines. So that all happened a decade before pretty much Carrico and Weissman.
You decided to speak out against the technology being used for these COVID vaccines.
Actually, I decided to speak out about the bioethics. I as somebody who has been trained extensively.
I mean, that's exactly the bullshit, right? Because instead of being specific, instead of rolling out the elevator pitch like I would here, no, I decided to speak out because the fake anti-vax movement in America is fake. They don't make any progress. And I figured out that historically speaking, at some point we understood that intramuscular injection of a combination of substances was a dumb idea. And that's why we taught people to make a little bump under the skin so that we were sure that we weren't putting it in the muscle. And then suddenly around, 50 years ago or so, we decided to say, screw it. And we're just going to talk about it as if it all works. And the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine is one of those vaccines that in the actual papers, it says that it's a subcutaneous vaccine that can also be administered intramuscularly if you want to. That's just a stupid idea. Now, what I want you to imagine and realize is that it's such a biologically stupid idea that they have to talk like this. Well, I spoke out about bioethics because, the nuance and the subtlety of... No, there's no nuance, there's no subtlety. Intramuscular injection, very specifically, is a dumb idea from a biological perspective. It's the worst place to put anything that you intend your immune system to be augmented by. It would be the worst place to put it. And so transfection, intramuscular transfection, is a dumb idea, maybe compounded by the fact that it's recombinant, something produced in a very unpure. That all compounds the dumb shittery of it. But it doesn't change the fundamental fact that this idea of intramuscularly injecting a combination of substances, even if it's pure RNA with or without a lipid nanoparticle, is not a clever concept unless you're going to call it the clever concept its name, which is transfection. And it was never a concept that had a molecular medical use. That is all an illusion, a working assumption that all of these people are under, and therefore everybody that listens to them becomes under as well. It is literally an enchantment.
In clinical research and bioethics, I thought, I saw how politicized all this was. And there's a lot of other events around that, me assisting or trying to assist the FDA, et cetera. But particularly
he just admits it, that he's assisting the FDA. I said this a couple months ago already, that if they appoint him to a voluntary position that's at the CDC and the FDA, and he's got a little badge, then he can go into all the offices of all the people that he's in charge of scripting and handling, like Marty McCary of Egypt and the UK, like Vinayak Prasad of India, of Jayanta Bhattacharya of India. These people need handlers, and this guy and Kevin McKernan or people that they script are probably their handlers, just like he was Mary Holland and Meryl Nass's handlers, scripters, while they were controlling Bobby Kennedy and sabotaging Children's Health Defense for the last 10 years.
Initial rollout in Canada that involved compulsion and enticement of children bothered me. And then, of course, later the mandates. So I think I was the first person to...
And of course, he was seminal in scripting the NCI meetings up in Canada, gave it the, requisite cred that they needed, and then that whole organization went to pot because they couldn't come up with a message. They couldn't have a priority. It was just everybody has to have a voice, and we have to record all these hours, but no summaries, no elevator pitch, no evolving set of goals, no evolving message, none at all. And that's why he says, well, I spoke out about the bioethics.
Write an essay about why this was wrong from a bioethical standpoint to coerce, entice, and compel people to take an experimental medical product that was fundamentally a gene therapy.
And so all those words are an enchantment to disguise the fact that what you were really coerced into accepting was PCR as a diagnostic and novel RNA as a danger. Do you hear it? And he was part of coercing you. All of these scripted actors that have been on the internet at international COVID summits and speaking in some off the main chamber room at the EU, these are all scripted theaters that if you listen to them, you will be entranced and coerced into accepting their working assumptions. The main ones being that PCR is a useful medical diagnostic which no one questions anymore, and that RNA is a danger. Free-range RNA can potentially destroy the globe.
That set in motion a series of interactions where I was identified as somebody who didn't have a conflict of interest, but understood the technology at a time when the public had, there was a very poor effort by the companies and by the government.
Oh, please give a donation to the Lighthouse, because they really need donations, because they need your help. Like PBS NewsHour needs our help. This is the illusion. They will suck all of the value out of the internet to make sure that no spontaneous grassroots truth ever emerges. That's what the independent bright web that I'm trying to build is all about. That's why I'm trying to encourage you to get off of social media. I'm encouraging you to use independent platforms like Mastodon, Soapbox, all of this stuff. Honestly, Donald Trump is doing it specifically to discredit it. Why do you think Donald Trump has Truth Social other than to discredit the use of independent text platforms like Soapbox, which is what Truth Social is? It would be no different than if Trump started to use PeerTube in order to make you think and everybody think that PeerTube is like some kind of white nationalist platform, man. You shouldn't be on that platform. That's exactly what I expect to happen as our reach via PeerTube moves forward, phone by phone and laptop by laptop. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy that you decided to join me. Ik ben zo blij dat je hier bent. Dit programma wordt niet mogelijk apart from an actual military exercise. Het wordt niet mogelijk dat dit film bestaat.
To just explain to people.
It's impossible that this exists by random. This is because it is a military exercise.
He is the life of parties he has never attended. If opportunity knocks and he's not home, opportunity waits. When in Rome, they do as he does. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always ruin things, but when I do, I prefer the Great Reset. Stay awake, my friends.
Now, we should be scared because behind Robert F. Kennedy Jr., around Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is a whole fake conservative movement that even includes the pro-life movement. The pro-life movement in America has been used in exactly the same compartmentalized way that the anti-vax movement has been. That's why the pro-life movement and the pro or anti-vax movement is not the same. That's why fighting for kids' health has to be so specific. You know, like Children's Health Defense is not about poverty. Children's Health Defense is not about kids being killed by fentanyl or carfentanil. It's not about homeless kids. And that's how you can see they don't make progress. America is being sabotaged by these scripted actors, these fake frauds, and our grandchildren are in danger of being enslaved by their employers. Including these people right here, including these people who, because they were all world traveling together, on stage together, they have to be working against us. And it doesn't matter what they say now about how they've changed their minds or why they don't trust each other. They have no legitimate reason to have not made any progress beyond where they are now, other than being scripted actors. Geert van den Bosch is one of the worst frauds on earth. Jessica Rose is one of the worst frauds on earth. Bob Wallace Malone is one of the worst frauds on earth. Sacha Latipova is one of the worst Ukrainian frauds on earth. This guy, Asim Malhotra, is one of the worst frauds on earth. His dad is dead because of his fraud. And that guy right there is Mike Palmer. Mike Palmer is a German who lives in Canada. He's also a fraud, and he's responsible for sabotaging what was called Doctors for COVID Ethics on the internet. He's scum. And he was also traveling the world with these people because they then split up to do more damage. These are not real people. Understand that. And I will go to my grave telling people the truth about this as I know it. Just like somebody who saw a UFO wouldn't just stop because I guess I told everybody. And now that everybody knows and everybody's listened, I guess I can move back on to my hobbies. That's not how this works. The world isn't how you think it is. These are not real people. Podcasters are not real people. Look, Joseph Mercola is promoting Gavin DeBecker. You want to find out about how creepy Robert Malone and all these people are? Gavin DeBecker provided security for CHD, Children's Self-Defense, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. before he went running for president and during running for president because Joe Biden wouldn't give him any Secret Service or some shit like that. Then after Donald Trump got elected, he continued to raise money with his email contacts to pay for the security that the Biden administration wouldn't pay for. And he was paying Gavin DeBecker, the same guy who provides private security for Jeff Bezos, you know, the owner of Whole Foods and frickin' Amazon, who makes billions of dollars a year in the EU without paying taxes. That guy has the same security provider as Robert F. Kennedy Jr. You know, the one that was in this silly book that was, you know, gonna run for president as an independent and then get picked up by the Republican, and then the Republican would get shot. That guy. And Mercola is also promoting Patrick Schu's song, writing articles about Patrick Schu's song, who is, of course, a scripted actor who has long connections to the Winburn Institute, where Robert Malone set up the second-generation internet connection for all of the cancer data right before the anthrax vaccine would be rolled out. But it doesn't matter. That history is irrelevant. All you need to know is that Robert Malone isn't who he says he is. And what's crazy is that they've done this for a while. Here's Nick Fuentes being amplified on the Times of India for being racist against Indians and calling out the Indian foreign actors that are helping to sabotage conservative America, even running for a conservative freaking governor in the state next door in Ohio. Funny thing is, the exact same pattern applied to the Thomas Crooks thing. You know Thomas Crooks, the guy who supposedly went to the high school that my kids go to, supposedly took a shot at Donald Trump and hit him in his ear exactly the same way as the guy in Breaking Bad got hit in his ear. Supposedly, the Times of India also promoted the same story where there was this one girl at the high school who said that, yeah, a long time ago, he also threatened the Times of India did that story. Now the Daily Mail and the Times of India is promoting some chick by the name of Jessica Rose as a COVID vaccine injury whistleblower, you know, like, are you kidding? Jessica Rose, a Canadian expert in immunology from Memorial University of Newfoundland. That's the first time I've ever heard of her having a faculty position or association of any kind. That's remarkable. Now that's January 15th, 2026. So if you don't think we're under attack as a globe, you're out of your mind. And here she will cite that she published a paper with Peter McCullough about myocarditis that was withdrawn. And so now you can see, because Peter McCullough is also coming to the lighthouse. Peter McCullough is also coming to the lighthouse, okay? Why isn't there? There's supposed to be something there. I put something here. Something is not completely saved. That's okay. I'll just escape really quick and start it again to make sure I don't lose the last bit. But these people are putting out a paper with a guy in Canada that I'm pretty sure doesn't know how he's being used. They're going around telling everybody that things are contaminated and that's the relevant discussion, when in reality it's not. And I think I can explain a lot of it, but I just can't do it all in one stream. But there are actors. There are actors everywhere. America is being sabotaged.
America today, according to Cornel West, has become a contest of domination and deals, not integrity and decency. In his words, it is an empire in deep spiritual bankruptcy and moral decay, where Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and the military-industrial complex sit at the center of power. A philosopher, preacher, and self-proclaimed love warrior forged in the Black freedom struggle, West has devoted his life to writing landmark works and educating on race, democracy, and justice.
Ladies and gentlemen, they are all frauds. It's unfortunate, but they are all frauds, and it's remarkable. There is a way to see through it, though. All you have to do is investigate the way that America is being governed by a theater and how it was instituted specifically during the pandemic, but it has its roots all the way back to 9/11. And in order to see through it, you need to answer these questions: who, what, where, when, why, how. And nobody's trying to do that anymore, including Robert Malone, because he's speaking out about bioethics. What, when, where? A novel RNA virus in December of 2019 in Wuhan, China. That's what they said. That's what they said. That's where they said it. That's when they said it. Where and how is that a sequence was placed, it was found and reported. That's exactly how they did it, because as I told you, they can make DNA, they can make RNA, and they can put it in places, and PCR will find it. That's the only thing that I know for sure, because that's the molecular biology foundation of all academics. All academic biological molecular inventions and investigations rely on recombinant DNA and PCR used to find it, amplify it, and make more of it. And that's all you need to put a sequence somewhere, find it in people, find it in a test, find it in a reaction, and claim that its existence is evidence of something that it's not. And that's what they did for a national security priority, simply by making sure that everyone's working assumption was contagion. That the sequence found and reported was evidence of contagion. That people falling on the street was evidence of contagion. That censorship was evidence of contagion. That a guy in Seattle was evidence of contagion. This is an elaborate illusion created because of a high-level national security priority that spans both administrations and governments. It is a global human genome project, and the only working assumption is that there's a novel global contagion. That's all that's required, because we have no data from 2019. We have no data at all, because nobody was using PCR to find anything on a systematic basis before 2020. So there's no reason to believe that since then we have discovered serendipitously, because of a crisis, a new level of diagnostic excellence.
Stop lying!
Instead, what we have is a complete and total global bamboozlement into believing that. That's what we've got. That's what's so terrifying about this. I'm going backwards. Sorry, that's screwing with me for a second there. It's like, what's happening? I don't remember all these. So it's a novel global contagion is a working assumption that even Joe Rogan implied. And that working assumption that requires RNA virology and molecular contagion, both of which we have no real good evidence for. And instead, the way to figure it out is to focus on what these people said and did, even Robert Malone in 2020, 21, 22, because then you will see that he was not a moral and principled actor, but he was a scripted one. All of them were. And specifically, they were scripted to acknowledge the virus, the deaths caused by it, the failed response in America, and the absolute crisis that it represented, instead of saying it was murder. Murder! So a population pyramid problem was managed, an anticipated rise in all-cause mortality. That's the magic trick. The signal was expected. All they had to do was kill poor people and kill old people with supplementary oxygen and call it viral pneumonia, so, I don't know, antibiotics won't work for her. And these people will be managed. The ones that are about to take the most medical care to sustain the last 6 months of their life could just be wiped out. And it doesn't matter if some of them in Scotland were done with midazolam. All of them were done with supplementary oxygen. That's why they said we're running out of ventilators. That's why Elon Musk was scripted to say he was going to stop his factory and retool to make ventilators. That's absurd. But what it did was it gave an excuse for the protocol to have supplementary oxygen. And supplementary oxygen, if you read your textbooks, leads to acute respiratory distress syndrome. Acute respiratory distress syndrome. You know, that thing that SARS causes. And that's why if you cover up the rest of the population pyramid and just look at the most expensive part of the population, you can see why at some point in time they thought, well, from a national security perspective, we're going to have to manage this problem. It's already getting bad now, but it's the top bars that matter the most, because when those get wide, that's when NHS and all these insurance companies are paying, when Medicaid is paying. Pandemic is a myth. The pandemic is definitely a myth. Podcasters are, and their agency is a myth. These are not free-thinking people. They are on a carefully crafted script which accepts all these things as phenomenon, as real phenomenon, and people as real people. And the achievement that they've done is bamboozled the world about this stuff, which is all related to the Human Genome Project. The illusion that it was done, you know, when Tony Fauci and Francis Collins announced it done like 5 different times. Ladies and gentlemen, your children are trapped in a national security theater. Please get them off of social media as quickly as possible. Autism spectrum disorder is a myth used to make sure that intramuscular injection is never questioned as a methodology, that virology is never questioned as a science, and public health is never questioned as a reason. I think the same thing can be said for pandemics and gain of function. These myths are terrible, and we don't want to pass them on to our children. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Gigaohm Biological, a high-resistance, low-noise information brief brought to you by a biologist in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's in a message for Americans by an American, but today's episode is also a message for all the Dutch people out there, all the people in the Netherlands. Ik hoop dat jullie dit zien en vinden het een beetje gezellig. En ook kunnen zien dat ik kan een beetje Nederlands praten, zo ik kan handig op een Nederlands podcast zijn. Je kunt Nederlands gebruiken met mij en ik kan Engels teruggeven of ook een beetje Nederlands proberen. So, zet hem maar op, zeg ik. The email and the everything's available. Thanks for being here. I'll see you again soon.
You got any white bread?
Yes?
I'll have some toasted white bread, please.
You want butter or jam on that toast, honey?
No, ma'am. Dry.
Got any fried chicken?
Best damn chicken in the state.
Bring me 4 fried chickens and a Coke.
You want chicken wings or chicken legs?
4 fried chickens and a Coke.
And some dry white toast, please.
You all want anything to drink with that?
No, ma'am.
A Coke.
Be up in a minute. We got 2 hunkies out there dressed like Hasidic diamond merchants.
Say what?
They look like they're from the CIA or something.
What they want to eat?
The tall one wants white bread, toast, dry, with nothing on it.
Elwood.
And the other one wants 4 whole fried chickens and a Coke.
And Jake, shit, the Blues Brothers. Hi, Jake.
Matt!
Hi, Elwood.
How you doing?
How you doing? How was Joliet?
Oh, it's bad. On Thursday night, they serve a wicked pepper steak.
Can't be as bad as the cabbage rolls at the Terre Haute Federal Pen.
Or that oatmeal at the Cook County Slammer.
Oh, they are all pretty bad.
Matt, me and Elwood, we're putting the band back together. We need you and Blue Lou.
Don't talk that way around here. My old lady, she'll kill me.
Ma'am, you gotta understand that this is a lot bigger than any domestic problems you might be experiencing.
Matt, what the hell is he talking about?
Don't get riled, sugar.
Don't get riled, sugar me. Now, you're not going back on the road no more, and you ain't playing in them old 2-bit sleazy dives. You're living with me now, and you're not gonna go sliding around with your old white hoodlum friends.
But, babes, this is Jake and Elwood, the Blues Brothers.
The Blues Brothers? They still owe you money, fool.
Ma'am, would it make you feel any better if you knew that what we're asking Matt here to do is a holy thing?
You see, we're on a mission from God.
Don't you blaspheme in here. Don't you blaspheme in here. Now, this is my man. This is my restaurant. You two are going to just walk right out that door without your dry white toast, without your 4 fried chickens, and without Mad Guitar Murphy.
Now, you listen to me. I love you, but I'm the man and you're the woman, and I'll make the decision concerning my life.
You better think about what you're saying. You better think about the consequences of your actions.
Oh, shut up, woman.
You better think about what's trying to do to me. Yeah, think. Let your mind go, let yourself be free. Let's go back, let's go way on the back way. I didn't even know you couldn't have been too much more than 10. I ain't no psychiatrist, I ain't no doctor with degrees. It don't take too much IQ to see what you're doing to me. You better think about what's trying to do to me. I don't think. Let your mind go, let yourself be free. Oh, free.
Let's boogie.
Well, go ahead, damn it.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you again soon. Not sure if it'll be tomorrow, but as soon as we got another show, of course, it's going to be on. See you soon, live here. Use PeerTube.